Hi, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Reinvent and Rediscover. I'm your host, Ava Laurie, and I'm happy you're here again. This week, we're going to be talking all about finding your path, but specifically what to do when you feel like the path and the plan that you had for yourself derails, and how to kind of reframe that mindset that can end up leaving you spiraling if you're not careful. And if you can't tell, we're in a different setting this week. I'm in my childhood bedroom. I drove 12 hours to Kentucky to see my family for the week. So that's where we're at. And I think the lighting is kind of weird in here if you're on the video version because it's so bright in this room. But anyways, let's get into this video, this podcast episode in general, whatever. I was thinking about recently how we often talk about the limitless possibilities and the limitless potential that we possess as people, and the opportunity that we have to make any decision with our life. We can choose whoever we want to become, whatever life that we want to live. The choice is ours, right? And I always told myself growing up, the world is my oyster, stuff like that. And now that I'm in my mid 20s, I have been overwhelmed by that idea because there are so many lives that I want to live and so many versions of myself that I want to nourish that I've gotten into that kind of almost stuck mentality because the overwhelm that I feel of choice, because there is so many possibilities. And this may not resonate with everyone. Some people may be following a specific plan. So, if this does not resonate with you, that's totally fine. But I know that there are people out there who feel like they want to optimize their potential and their life, and they want to live to the fullest and explore every opportunity and every version of themselves, and they want to travel the world, and they want to have a good career and make a lot of money and experience a lot of things and do as much as possible until they die. And that's how I constantly feel. And I remember even when I was in high school, I would stay up super late every night stressing over who I wanted to become after high school. And when I was thinking about college, what should I study? Where should I go? Should I try and move abroad? Should I try and, do all of these things? And I thought there's no possible way I have enough time to do everything that I want to do. So I kind of want to dive into that a bit because, like I said, I know that it may resonate with some people and that their future has become overwhelming to think about because of all of the things they want to do in life. And recently, I heard a quote that said, "We can do anything, but we can't do everything." And that kind of sent me spiraling too, because the whole idea of, what is my next step? I've talked about a couple times now on this podcast how I recently quit my job that was once my dream job. And now I'm faced with the reality of what is my next step? Because when I quit my job, I thought I knew what the next step in my plan was, right? I was chasing a career and chasing, a job of higher status or higher money, higher payout. And I feel like I just kept running into dead ends and I kept getting rejected. And part of that is just the job market in the New York City, New Jersey area that I live in. But I think a part of me too is thinking that I am forcing this plan, this blueprint to align with me, and maybe it's not. And perhaps this rejection I keep feeling is actually just redirection. And so I want you to kind of reframe your mindset with that. Is we often take rejection as kind of a hit to the ego. And when you're chasing worldly desires, the ego is involved. That's why you're taking redirection as rejection, is because the ego is involved. But when you kind of strip away your ego and you're left with your inner truth and your intuition and who you really are, then things will become a lot more clear. So the way that I kind of have been combating that panic is by this reframe. And also just thinking about how much I've been idealizing and romanticizing this plan in this thing that I think I want, this version of myself that I am romanticizing because I think that it will offer me, a higher status or this financial freedom, and people will respect me more, and I'll have the freedom to buy whatever I want to buy and go wherever I want to go, and I'll have access to people of more status and this and that. I'm romanticizing this idea in my head, and I think we often do that. Is when you're a dreamer and you're constantly dreaming of these versions of yourself, sometimes you start over romanticizing things, and that's okay. It's normal, but in actuality, I think sometimes we lose a bit of our personal values and our truth in pursuit of what we think we want. And you have to be careful with that. You have to be careful when you notice that you're starting to sacrifice parts of you in order to become like someone else or to achieve something that you think will give you more respect or status or, otherworldly desires. If you keep chasing worldly desires that do not align with you, you will always feel unfulfilled, or you will always feel a little bit of a void, a little bit of emptiness. It will never feel quite right. Or the universe or God will keep giving you signs that it's not for you, and you'll keep forcing it, and you'll constantly feel like I'm not good enough, and you'll start questioning your self-worth on account of these signs telling you, no, you need to redirect. You need to remember who you are, not who you think that the world wants you to be, but who you truly actually want to be. I feel like in society, we talk so much about following your gut and following your instincts, your intuition, but I think at the end of the day, society still kind of shames those people who do listen to their heart or who are guided by their intuition, because I feel like most people fear not being like the crowd or not fitting in. And at the end of the day, I think that comes down to a fear of failure. And if success is guaranteed by following a plan or a blueprint, then most people will follow that plan or blueprint because they want to achieve the success. And if they know it's guaranteed, if they work their way up the corporate ladder or get whatever job it may be, if they know that it will guarantee them a certain financial stability, then they will chase it, even if they don't care about it at all, even if most days it requires them to sacrifice a part of themselves and feel empty. I just don't want to be like that. I don't want to chase something that is leaving me feeling empty. And keep in mind, of course, I realize that the logistics of following your dreams and following your intuition and following your gut, there are realities of the world that you have to consider, like, am I going to able to afford to take care of myself properly, and living expenses or your debt? Is there family responsibilities I have? Whatever. I understand there's life things that do get in the way, and there are realities of the world that you do have to consider. But at the end of the day, I feel as though you cannot reason your way out of your truth. And I think I'm always feeling a resistance to the things that I truly want to chase because my reasoning is getting in the way, my ego is getting in the way. I'm trying to think, I'm trying to find a reason why it wouldn't work out for me or why logically it doesn't make sense. sometimes you can't logic your way out of your intuition and your truth because it's not guided by logic. It's not guided by your brain. It's guided by your heart and your soul. Sometimes you just have to surrender and submit yourself to it. And I feel like the more you suppress your inner desires, the more empty you feel while chasing worldly desires. So I want you to ask yourself, am I chasing worldly desires like money, status, fame, or even approval? Or are you chasing what you truly want? Because oftentimes I feel like the two don't always intersect. You can find a good balance, but I think a lot of times when you are chasing worldly desires, you're not fulfilling your heart, your spirit, your soul. I feel like they are often two separate things, and you need to be able to distinguish your identity from the collectives and your unique experience and your unique desires from the world and the plan and what's on paper and what everyone else is doing. And this came up because I was talking to a friend the other day who I met in a solo traveling experience in Japan. And we were talking about, like, what are we going to do next? And he was kind of like asking me what my plan is next now that I quit my job. And my lease in New Jersey ends in 2 months. So this puts me in a very transitional phase where I have to pivot. I have to do something different, right? What I'm doing, I'm not going to be able to sustain not working and staying living in New Jersey, but I kind of now have all of these options. I either find another place to live and find a job there, or I move back home for a period of time and then kind of start over. There's all these different possibilities because everything is coming to an end. And that ending and that transitional phase, I was telling him how transitioning and pivoting in life feels like a setback because it is the time in your life where things move slow and you're still. And there's not many times in life where I feel like I'm stagnant. I feel like I am always guided by growth. I'm always trying to grow. I love working towards something. And when I'm not working towards anything, it feels like I'm going backwards. And something I realized is the importance of transition. Through kind of this conversation and just in general doing a lot of reflecting, is this transitional period is essential in order for me to turn the page. At the end of the day, we are not capable of surpassing the kind of in between. You cannot quit a job and then wake up the next day with a completely new life, right? You can't plant a seed and then all of a sudden the next day you have fruit coming off of the tree or whatever. You can't plant the seed and then the next day the tree is already grown. There's a period where stuff is happening in the soil and you have to keep showing up and watering the soil and then it'll grow. And sometimes with our need for instant gratification all the time, it feels like a hit to the ego when you have to stand still and work and try something different. And you have to spend that time kind of redefining yourself, narrowing in on what you want the next chapter to look like. And I was telling him all about how I want to do everything in life and I just can't decide what I want to chase next. And this brought me back. I was talking to one of my best friends last week about how I keep thinking about how much I want to do the Camino de Santiago. And I've thought about this all year long, but I've came up with excuses or rationale of why I cannot do it. For the longest time, it was because I was still tied to being a flight attendant, and people were like, well, you could take off work and, schedule your days around it and go set out and do it. You have the free flight to go do it. But I still felt bound by the job. And then after that, I was like, well, now I'm stuck in New Jersey and now this, and it doesn't really make sense. And maybe I don't actually want to do it that bad. But the more that you question it and try and ration your reason out of it, the more it feels like it wants to keep coming up. And what she said to me when I was having this conversation is, well, what is your gut telling you? Without overthinking it, what comes to mind first? And I immediately spit that out. I was like, I still want to do the Camino. She's like, well, why can't you? I feel like that's your answer. And I kind of just thought for a second, I was like, wow, maybe it isn't that serious, the more that you overthink it. And he kind of asked me the same question, like, well, what comes to mind first that you want to do next? And I was like, I keep thinking about the Camino. He's like, well, great. Plan to do it. So at the end of the day, that's kind of where I got my clarity is, when you just focus on what pops into mind first, it's not popping into your mind for no reason. Okay. And I kept seeing signs about the Camino. So a little bit of a backstory about that. I heard about the Camino de Santiago, I think at the beginning of this year, sometime in January. And then I set out for a week in Japan, traveled through Japan a bit, and met some friends. I was talking to them about it. They were like, you should absolutely do it, whatever, yada, yada, yada. I was like, nah, okay, maybe I will. Then I went back, went on some work trips. I was in Vermont and I was walking around, went to a bookstore. The first book I pulled out was a Camino memoir. I was like, wow, that's really ironic. I keep feeling like I'm seeing signs. But I kept telling myself, well, maybe not, now it's not the time, I can't do it, whatever. It got brought up again with someone else I met. I was like, okay, why does this keep getting brought up all the time? Like, it's obviously somewhere in my mind. I keep seeing signs. And then I ended up going back to Japan for another week. And I stayed in this small town and I wanted to go see this waterfall. I met two girls in the hostel the night before I was going to set out for this like 4-hour train ride to see this waterfall. And this girl was talking about a pilgrimage she did through like the countrysides, like really remote parts of Japan. I don't know what the pilgrimage is called, but you go to different shrines and temples throughout Japan. And it's kind of, I feel like it's the same premise of the Camino, but in Japan and more Buddhist related, centered. And I was like, that's so funny you say that because it just keeps reminding me that I want to do the Camino de Santiago. She was telling me how friends she known had done it and whatever. And I was like, I should really do that. And then fast forward to, the other day after my friend asked me, like, what's on your mind? I spit out the Camino. She's, do it. Like, I don't know. So not long after that, I decided, I really want to go see my family. I'm going to just drive the 12 hours home and go see them. But I was kind of in my head about whether or not I should drive home. But I made the intention of wanting to feel clarity on my future. And I had prayed a week ago, which I've been kind of falling out of practice with praying and falling out of my relationship with God a bit. I have talked about, the fact that I'm religious on this podcast a little bit. But I was praying and I felt really lost. And I was like, God, I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I'm trying to follow my heart, but I want you to show me a sign when I'm, kind of there. I'm like headed on the right path. And if you can show me a yellow butterfly. But that randomly popped into my mind, a yellow butterfly. I don't know. I hadn't even been seeing butterflies around. But it popped into my mind and I was like, let's go with it. And the last time that I had asked him for a sign, it was elephants. And then that happened in a really crazy way. So I trusted that when I'm praying for good reason and with good intention, that God will show up for me. So I was on this road trip and I was about halfway through, was really hungry, but I kept like waiting. You know, when you're on a road trip and you keep pushing back the time till you stop, you're like, okay, another 30 miles. Okay, I'll wait till it's exactly, 8 p.m. or I've gone this many miles. So eventually it rolls around to around 9:30 p.m. and I'm in kind of the middle of nowhere in between. I think I was around the state line of Maryland and West Virginia, but at this point I was in Maryland. I didn't even know it at the time, but it'll make sense in a minute. I decided to stop, and the only thing that was open around was McDonald's. So McDonald's it was. And I was gonna go through the drive-through because I was just gonna keep driving and eating just to make the time go by fast. But I wanted to get out of the car. So I went inside McDonald's, ordered my food, picked a seat. I look over, and on the wall there was this flag that said Hello Spring. And I was looking at it and I was like, Hello Spring. It's September. It's going into fall. Spring was forever ago and it's not coming soon. So I was like, that is really weird. And I thought maybe I should take a picture of this because this is just strange. But I passed it off, whatever, ate my food, left. I'm driving down the road about an hour later and I thought back about this flag and I was like, I think there was a yellow butterfly on that because I just saw the picture in my head, but I couldn't remember explicitly because in the moment it didn't clock. So I'm driving down the road. I know you're not supposed to do this, but I got on my phone. I'm trying to look for the McDonald's. And like I said at the time, I didn't even know what state I was in because I knew I was in West Virginia now, but I think I was in Maryland or maybe Virginia. I kept seeing Virginia license plate. Honestly, I wasn't really even sure. So I'm like looking back. I'm going through my McDonald's app. I'm trying to find the exact location. I found it. I call them. I'm like, I was really hesitating to call them because I knew I sounded like a nut, but I had to know because this was my confirmation. You know what I mean? So I called the McDonald's. Some nice young lady answers the phone. I was like, hello, this is a really odd question. Is there a Hello Spring or something like that flag hung on the wall? She was like, what? I repeated myself. She said, yes. And I said, I'm sorry, I just have to know, is there a yellow butterfly on that flag? She said, yes, there is. And in that moment, I immediately tears brought to my eyes. I explained to her a little bit. We had a little bit of a conversation. I was like, sorry, that was so weird. She's like, no, 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 whatever, it's fine. So I'm driving down the road, and at this point, I'm like in tears because that was my big confirmation. And that sign from God, that the Camino that I've been thinking about, I feel like He's telling me to go do it. So, anyways, this whole story goes to say that when you are in alignment with your truth and you keep trying to logic your way out of it, I don't feel like it'll go away. You'll continue to see signs from the universe or God, if you believe in God, that you are doing what you are meant to do. And when you kind of are in tune with that, it feels like constant confirmation, and it's a beautiful and very comforting thing. And it's important that you don't ignore it because I have continuously ignored it. And sometimes the signs cannot be any clearer or any more blatantly clear. There's been people I feel like being sent to me from all over the world telling me I need to go do it. And I keep putting it off and whatever. So if there's something like that in your life and you feel like you keep seeing signs, but you're still questioning it, why are you still questioning it? If it's in alignment with you, you'll often know. So anyways, I kind of got clarity on that situation finally. And kind of further in my conversation with my friend, he was saying, and I kind of liked this analogy. I wonder if he'll listen to this podcast. If so, hey. He was talking about how choosing your path and treating your path kind of like a cascading waterfall. And the reason this brought me a little bit of comfort and peace is because he was saying, pick what you want to do next and have a plan B if that doesn't work out. Maybe have a plan C just in case that one doesn't work out, and go from there. And don't get too caught up in the details, but having an overarching idea. And the reason that brought me comfort is because it was allowing me to be reminded of our endless possibilities while also combating the fear of it not working out. The fear of failure kind of getting replaced with constant new plans and a reminder that something not working is not the end of the world. So it made me think I just have to choose the next step, which originally for me was get a job in Manhattan and find, a new apartment. If that doesn't work out, move back home for a few months, do the Camino. If that doesn't work out, move back home for a few months and go from there. But just knowing the step ahead and maybe a couple other plans reminds you that there are so many versions of you that you can nourish, and it's okay if something doesn't work out. It's not that serious. It's life. So kind of a reframe is something not working out is not failure. There is something else. I feel like our head often gets in the way of our heart and our ego gets in the way of our truth, which is why we feel rejected. Our ego is bruised and we take that as a setback. But if you learn to put your ego aside from your decision making, you will feel a deeper sense of fulfillment, not clouded by worldly things. And that's a very important takeaway that I have been learning and teaching myself, and kind of continues to be reinforced through conversations I have with different friends. And kind of further into that, talking about how you don't have to have everything figured out. I've talked about this so many times, and everyone always says you don't have to have everything figured out. And it is so true. You really only need the next step. What can you do right now, or what can you do in the present moment? And everything else will just happen. And I was thinking about this because I try to get so far into the future of like, okay, well, if I do this Camino and it takes about 4 to 6 weeks, then what am I going to do after that? But as soon as I start this next step, it's opening a portal of opportunity that I cannot currently see. But I have to take the first step in order to enter into that portal of opportunity. I cannot predict what opportunities will arise from that initial step, but every decision you make, every choice you make is opening a portal of opportunity for you that you cannot see in the present moment yet. So don't get discouraged because you can't even fathom what is possible or what is available to you because you're not there quite yet. And that's okay. It's like a video game when you make one choice and now all of a sudden you have 10 more options, and you choose one and then you have 15 more options. And things keep opening up as you open new doors and you try new things and you pick a different option. So now more options are available. But you won't know that when you first hit play. But it takes making the first decision. And things will quite literally start lining up for you. You just have to hold on to what is the next step. You don't need to overplan, because sometimes when you're over planning things, you're kind of setting yourself up for disappointment when things get redirected. If you have a step-by-step plan until the age of 45, it's going to really make you spiral. In 5 years, when part of your plan derails, and then what? Allow yourself to be open to spontaneity and new opportunities arising. You don't have to be so tunnel vision on things. And that's given me a lot of peace because the world is so structured sometimes, and I think it's easy to become so tunnel vision and head first into one specific thing. But when you're only focused on one thing and you ignore everything else around you, you're closing off the portal of opportunity. But you can tap into that portal of opportunity if you stop being so tunnel vision about things and allow the world to show you the access you have to all different versions of yourself. It takes time to feel comfort in that because it's uncertain and it's unknown, and we don't like that. It's normal to feel anxious about uncertainty, but uncertainty is the most exciting part of life because that's really when the magic happens. That's when the most growth happens. That's when you figure out who you really, really are, is the uncertain times. And I don't know what will happen after doing the Camino, or I don't know what will happen after moving wherever. But that's for future me. That's like a gift I'm saving for future me. You know? I'm like saving gifts for myself that future me will be so happy about. Like, oh, I'm so glad you made that decision. I've always talked about the quote, you are only one decision away from living a completely different life. Because one decision has a butterfly effect on your life. You make one decision and all of a sudden, it's like a domino effect. Things just keep happening and happening. That's the beauty of life. It's the gift that keeps on giving. And that's the truth. So you never know what will happen. But if you have one option, and then if that doesn't work out, and then that doesn't work out, find comfort in the endless possibilities that you have rather than overwhelm. There's no way for you to see enough in your future of opportunity and predict what may happen and predict this and if this and that. You don't need to predict far into your future. You just need to be guided and in tune with your intuition enough to guide you through and make decisions as you go along and you enter this portal of opportunity and more things keep arising. And trust yourself that you will always be where you are meant to be so long as you are where your feet are on the ground. You are present and aligned with your true self. You cannot make the wrong decision if you are making decisions that come from your truth in your heart. You will never be in the wrong place if you are guided by your truth. But if you reason and you find rationale for everything, you logic your way out of everything, you may feel like you are in the wrong place. Because maybe you are. But if you stay where your feet are on the ground and follow your heart and really tune in to your true desires, you will never make the wrong decision. My predictions about the future have led me astray, but my intuition has never. Okay? I hope this brought you a little bit of peace. And I know I kind of talked about a similar topic a little bit ago, not too long ago, but I had some new revelations as far as the overwhelm we feel with opportunity and our path and what step to take next. But it's going to be okay. And you just have to take one step into your portal of opportunity and kind of treat your path like a cascading waterfall, I guess. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. If so, like, comment, share with somebody who may resonate with this. And until next time on Reinvent and Rediscover, live passionately. Bye.